Journey to Becoming podcast is all about the changes, transitions, and transformations we encounter on our journey to aligning with purpose and living life with intentionality, fulfillment, and impact. I'm your host, Sabine Gideon, and my mission is to help those starting their entrepreneurial journeys or simply shifting gears to better align with purpose by sharing the journeys of others, offering practical tips and strategies, and providing encouragement to help you pull through whatever obstacle is standing in your way. So I invite you to sit back, relax, and join me on this journey of discovery. Joining us today on the Journey to Becoming podcast is Carrie Chown. Carrie is a life, health, and wellness coach. And in 2003, she received a bilateral lung transplant and has been sharing her powerful story for over several years via speaking, radio, and television. She is passionate about supporting people living with chronic health conditions and about partnering with health professionals to improve the patient experience. She is the recipient of the 2007 American Lung Association of California's Breath of Fresh Air Award and has been acknowledged by medical professionals, educators, and a former U.S. president for sharing her experience, strength, and hope in service to others. Welcome to the show, Carrie.
Thank you, Sabine. I'm so excited to be here. So my journey really got interesting when I was about 20 years old. I was a junior in college, and I was diagnosed with a heart-lung disease called pulmonary hypertension. I had no idea what that was, but the doctors told me that it was an incurable terminal illness, essentially, and that I probably had about 2 years to live. The only chance for life beyond that was a lung transplant, and that was just something that blew my mind. I was aware of organ donation at that time and supportive of it, but I never thought that I would need a lung transplant or a transplant of any kind. I think for most people hearing something like that, you would think, wow, like what a devastation. Like how do you move forward from that? But I was in a really interesting place in my life at that time. I was struggling with alcohol addiction, and I had started drinking when I was about 16. I had always felt very just uncomfortable in my skin, and really for no good reason. I just felt different then and like an outsider, and like everyone else had this memo for how to live life, and somehow I had missed it. And so when I started drinking, that discomfort was really eased by alcohol, but that didn't last very long. It was almost like this kind of firestorm inside, and it took just a few years for my addiction to really take off and become very destructive. So at the time that I was diagnosed with this illness, I had been feeling very lost, very depressed, and I'm a very spiritual person. I wasn't raised in any particular religion, but I knew that there was something bigger than me. And I remember I would just look out my window of my bedroom and just pray, just say, God, I don't know what to do. I'm so lost, and I need a way out. I don't know how to be here in this world. So when I received this diagnosis of this terminal illness, there was a part of me that felt like, wow, like this is God's answer to me. Like, I don't know how to be here, and now I won't be here. Like this illness is, in a way, almost felt like a gift, which looking back, I know there were a lot of really confused and twisted thoughts inside of me. And I think that, I was just, like I said, very lost. So I received this diagnosis. My life took a dramatic change. I had all these assumptions about what my future would look like, that I would finish college. I wanted to be a veterinarian. I thought, I'll meet someone and get married and have children in the house. And I just assumed I would have all of these things. And all of a sudden I'm 20 years old, and in 2 years I'll be gone. So I was able to finish college, which was a huge gift. It was a struggle. I was on some really intense medication, not chemotherapy, but a very similar kind of medication. And it was a really hard time in life, but I just kept pushing through somehow. And a kind of magical thing happened in that time. I realized that to stay healthy as I could with this condition, that I had to stop drinking. And I had no idea how to do that. That seemed impossible to me. At that point, I was drinking daily. And like I said, it was very destructive in my world. And so I found recovery through a 12-step program. And through that, I gained so many tools for living life on life's terms. I began praying and meditating and writing and, just really living my life much more intentionally. And so I went from being this physically healthy person who wanted to die into this shift of being someone who actually really wanted to live, but I was in this body that was failing. It was like I had this complete transformation. And so in 2003 was when my lung condition really took a nosedive. So I lived with it for 6 years, well beyond what the doctors predicted. And I had been told that with this condition, it often will go downhill and go quickly. So years before that, I was listed for a double lung transplant, which the statistics around lung transplant were pretty discouraging. And I really didn't think it was something I would ever go through with. But, when we're faced with, I think we don't really know how strong we are until we're faced with these huge challenges. And when I was facing the end of my life, this was the end of 2003, I was laying in a hospital bed. I could barely breathe. I couldn't walk. I could barely talk. And all of a sudden, I just really wanted to stay. I wanted to be here. And so I was completely willing to receive this transplant, this huge gift that I was waiting for. And at that time, I made a friend who was waiting for a heart transplant. So we were at the same medical center and we were just a couple years apart. So these two, young people, I was 26, he was 28. And we really became great friends and a huge support system for each other. And our families, really came together. And it was such a beautiful gift to have a friend like that who understood exactly what I was going through. So as the end of 2003 approached, it was really looking like these transplants weren't going to come in time. I mean, we were both so sick. And I actually sat down with my mom and we planned my funeral. We talked about songs that I wanted played. And that was just amazing to me that she was able to do that for me because I needed to say it. I needed to say the things that I wanted. And she gave me that gift of being able to listen and to hear it. And so on December 28th of 2003, I was staring out the window of the hospital, which had come to feel kind of like a prison to me. My body felt like a prison. The hospital room felt like a prison. I wasn't able to leave and I wasn't getting better. And I went to sleep and I just remember I prayed and just said, okay, God, I'm ready to go. Like I'm done fighting. I had this complete moment of surrender. And it really reminded me of the surrender that I had when I stopped drinking. It was like I stopped running from this thing that was ruining my life and just asked for help, and the help came. And so I did this again on this December 28th, and I thought that was it. I thought I would not wake up. And the next thing I remember is waking up on December 29th. The nurses were shaking me awake and asking me to sign forms. And one of them said, okay, you realize what's happening, right? Like we found lungs for you. You're getting your transplant. And it was so interesting. This complete calm came over me. I mean, the doctors kept saying, we can give you medication for your nerves, whatever you need to get through this. And I just felt like this is exactly as it was meant to be. Like I'm meant to go through this experience and I'm ready. I'm 100% ready. And so there was this buzz on the hospital floor and I thought, wow, everyone's just so excited for me. This is so wonderful. And they were. But the really amazing part is that I found out my friend Matt was also getting his heart transplant. And it turned out that we have the same donor. So our donor was a 16-year-old boy from the Bay Area in California. And I was to receive his lungs and Matt was to receive his heart. So Matt and I had started this journey together, and then it intersected, and we had this amazing, amazing gift come from this incredible being. Joel is our donor's name. So we both received our transplants. Our recoveries were actually relatively swift. We'd been in the hospital for over a month before. 10 days after the transplant, I walked out on my own 2 feet, which I had not walked in. It had been almost a couple months since I'd been able to walk. So I walked out of the hospital, and I remember this sense of freedom just coming out. Those doors opened up, and it was like I could breathe fresh air again for the first time. And I just felt like I was entering this new phase of my life. And Matt left the hospital 14 days later, I believe. And, there's this like hope at this point in the story, I think, for everyone, that Matt and I ultimately fall in love and get married.
I'm waiting.
Yes. Every time I tell this story, I think everyone's waiting for this big moment. And I remember at the time, I really wanted to be on Oprah. I wanted to tell this story to Oprah. And I told Matt, if we had fallen in love and gotten married, we definitely would have made Oprah, but we did not. Matt had a beautiful fiance named Joy throughout this whole process. They were engaged, and they were married 4 months after the transplants. So they are together today, and Matt is doing so well. I met my husband in 2005. So Lake Tahoe is one of my favorite places. We met there, and we were married there in 2008. So we both did get our fairy tale ending. It just looked a little bit different than you'd hope. We don't have the Hallmark version of the story, just quite. I had this amazing second chance at life. And I felt like it was the first time in a long time, because I was sober. I had, this like emotional and spiritual health. And now with my transplant, I had physical health as well. I kind of came into alignment, and I was really excited about what was ahead. So I got a lot of the things I had hoped, so long ago. My husband and I bought a home, and we had really great jobs, and we had a dog, and we were just really enjoying life. And then we decided in 2010 that we wanted to have children. And so we knew that I couldn't have children, but we thought, well, we'll see what our options are. So that led us down a 7 to 8 year journey of trying to, work with a surrogate. And then we tried adoption. We were working with an adoption agency for a couple years, and then they went bankrupt unexpectedly and closed their doors. We tried foster adoption in a couple different counties, and ultimately every door in front of us closed. And it was just this very dark period of my life. And I think there's kind of a perception with transplant patients that, you receive this huge gift, and you do, and it's amazing and it's wonderful, and that you'll just be grateful and you'll just have gratitude no matter what comes to you. And I had that. And at the same time, I really lost sight of all the gifts I'd received, because I wanted so badly to be a mother, and I just couldn't make it happen. I couldn't make it happen. And it really took my life over. Like I said, I really lost sight of everything else. And so in the fall of 2018, I think of this as really my third surrender. I literally hit my knees and just asked God to take this obsession from me, and this obsession to be a mom in the way that I wanted to be a mom. I had an idea of what that looked like, and it clearly was not the plan for me. And so I released that. Like in that moment, I received the help that I called upon, and I was freed from that.
So I am curious, prior to the diagnosis, were you feeling ill? Did something happen? Did something trigger you going to the doctor and then them telling you this?
Yes. So before the diagnosis, I had been physically healthy my whole life. I mean, I only went to the doctor for a sports physical or a checkup, and I started feeling short of breath. and like my heart rate was a little bit like more rapid than usual. And I remember telling my roommates, like, for some reason, I don't feel like I can climb up that hill, or I don't think I want to take the stairs. Let's take the elevator. I just felt off. And that lasted for about 9 months. And with pulmonary hypertension, the symptoms are very subtle at first. And because of that, it can go years and years and years before it's diagnosed. For me, I was really lucky that I was quite active. I was a snow skier, and I actually was a ski racer for my college. And so I was training for the next ski season, and just being up at altitude and pushing my body at that level, I was starting to pass out. And that was finally enough to have my doctor say, okay, we believe you, there is something going on. And that led them to do the test that ultimately led to the diagnosis.
And thank God, right? Thank God that you were so active where like it was noticeable, and they were able to catch it. One of the things that you said also around you surrendered, and you surrendered 3 times now, and surrendering and living life on life's terms, being intentional. And I think that's an amazing revelation to come to, because oftentimes, we want life to go our way. And so to be able to get to the place where you're just kind of like, okay, something must be bigger here, or something must be different, and just to surrender. Really appreciate you tuning into this week's episode of the Journey to Becoming podcast. Taking a quick break to extend an invitation to my Facebook group, The Tribe of Courageous Leaders. The group exists to support ambitious, impact-driven leaders in their development, both personally and professionally. As a member of the free group, you'll have access to weekly live trainings on topics ranging from mindset, time management and productivity, leadership, to money management and business strategy. The group is tailored for those who love to learn and want to do so with other like-minded professionals. So again, I invite you to head on over to sabinegideon.com/tribe to claim your spot, and be sure to catch the weekly live trainings on Wednesdays. Dates and times are shared and updated within the group, so be sure to join. I look forward to welcoming you to the community and have included the link to the tribe right down below in the show notes. Now, back to the show. One of the things also that you said was making the decision, laying in the hospital bed, that you wanted to stay, and in that moment, and asked for help. Recently, I was talking to someone, and it was around my suicide attempt, and they were like, well, if someone's in that space, if someone's in that mindset, what do they do? Like, and everyone that I've spoken to, when they've gotten to that really, really dark pit, in that dark place, where they are like, listen, it's either I'm going out or I need a reason to stay. They've asked for help, and help has responded, whether it came in the form of peace, whether it came in the form of some audible noise. For me, it was feeling God wrap his arms around me. So I love the fact that in that moment when you decided, hey, I wanted to stay, you shared that, you prayed that, and there was an answer. And the peace that you needed, that everything was going to be okay, came for you. I am also upset about this Matt situation. I'm sure your husband is a lovely person, and I'm sure Joy is a lovely woman, but I'm a little saddened by the story, just so you know.
You are not alone in that.
After overcoming so much, share with us how, once you surrendered, what impact did that have, whether it be on your mindset or your lifestyle, or where you shifted your focus?
The third surrender, the surrender when I let go of this dream of being a mom, was probably the hardest one for me, which may seem surprising, considering, especially before my lung transplant, you would think, wow, that was huge. But this desire inside of me to be a mom was so strong, and it was taking all of my energy to hold on to this dream, all of it. And so when I agreed or chose to put that down, like I just took the dream and I put it down. I don't feel like I gave it up. I think I just turned it over. And that created this huge shift where all of a sudden it was like I woke up again. I woke up to what my life was, the gift that it was just to be able to breathe and to be here. And, all the love and support that was around me, it was like I could receive all of that again. It was this huge shift in perception. And that was really what allowed me to take the path that I'm on now that I love so much. Because I had been working as an executive assistant in higher education for about 10 years. And I remember thinking, if I'm going to be a mom, this job makes sense. I have the benefits and it all makes sense. But I did not enjoy the work that I was doing. I was good at it, but it was kind of like soul crushing. Just every day going to my office and sitting there and knowing that I was not living in alignment with my purpose. I knew that, but I wasn't sure what my purpose was. And so when I freed up all the energy by surrendering this dream of being a mom, it allowed me to ask, why am I here? What am I doing? What is my purpose? And I worked with someone who was a life coach. And so I had a therapist at the time who was helping me recover from all the traumas I'd been through. And on top of that, working with a life coach to really help me get clear about what my goals were and figuring this out was so beneficial. And so we worked together for about a year, and that led me to leave my job in higher education. I took this huge leap of faith, not knowing am I going to fly or am I going to crash and burn? And ultimately I did fly, and I started working with other people and offering this beautiful gift of healing. And then my mother-in-law is very kind and generous. And she said, I think you would be an amazing life coach. You really enjoyed working with your life coach. And I think that's something you would love to do. So she really planted the seed, and I looked into life coaching school. And then over the past year and a half, I've gone on to get advanced certification and started my practice as a life, health, and wellness coach. So this combination of taking everything that I've been through and knowing that it's possible, no matter how difficult your situation is or how dire it is, how hard it looks, it is possible to recover. And I love that I'm able to do that with my clients.
Yeah, life coaches or coaches in general, we're usually drawn to the profession because we've gone through the thing, right? We've gone through the deep valleys and the darkest places and have come out. And so there's this burning desire to help others do the same. So, oftentimes when we go through a major change or transition in our lives, there is that period of time where there's a shift in our identity, or we start to question, well, who am I now that I'm not this? So I'm curious to know, from the time following the transplant itself, were there any shifts in your identity or how you saw yourself or what you believed was possible for you in life? And what was that?
Oh, I love that question. And it's helping me to remember that there was a huge shift. And I think that this happens for a lot of people who are chronically ill. So when you have a chronic illness, you become identified often with that illness and being a sick person. And I was very much that. There just wasn't, I thought I was going to be sick and then die. There wasn't really anything else to identify with. And so after my transplant, there was this very strange period where I was still somewhat identified as a sick person. And yet my doctors were saying, well, you're well now. Go out and live your life. There was a little asterisk with that because with lung transplant, the average survival is still around, it's about 50% make it to 5 years. So the statistics are somewhat discouraging, but I had faced discouraging statistics before and proven that I don't necessarily follow those. So I had this time where I was trying to figure out, how do I let go of this identity as being sick? How do I fully embody wellness and trust that I'm here for a reason? I don't know how long that is, and none of us do, but I don't want to be held back with my thoughts and my beliefs. I did a lot of work around this in therapy and spiritual work, and there was this huge shift. It was almost like there was a day where I took what it meant to be sick, Like when you're dying, people don't expect much of you. They don't expect you to go out and be working hard and climbing the ladder, and you're kind of sidelined, and that's where you're expected to be. You're dying. And so I took that pass that kind of said, you don't have to do anything. You're a lung transplant recipient. Like this is a lifelong condition that you're going to have. And I decided I'm ready to give that pass up. I want more for myself. I don't judge other patients who don't decide to do that. Like for some people, there's so much fear and uncertainty around transplant, and it's hard to choose to like fully embody your life and be well. But I had to do that for me. I knew that the work that I was going to do required me to completely choose life and choose wellness. And so I did make a huge shift in that identity. And I just decided I'm well. I'm well. I'm healthy. I'm alive. I'm here. Like, yes, there are challenges. I have lots of medication that I take, and I still have many doctor's appointments, and I have to protect my health, but I am a healthy person. And that was a huge shift that allowed me to be here today.
I imagine, just because we're coaches, there are still a lot of mindset work that you have to do, or active work or intentional work that you have to do to actually maintain that. And when doubt comes in or fear comes in or something happens to trigger you falling backwards, like having some tools and some resources in place where you can recenter your mindset and recenter the truth of who you are at this point. So I'm curious if you'd share with us some of the routines or practices that you put in place then, or maybe still continue to do, to ensure that like your mind is aligned with who you are today and not who you were or the experience that you had in the past.
I use many of the tools of my recovery. Those have been the most powerful for me. So daily prayer and meditation have been huge. And for me, prayer is where I ask questions, I express myself, and meditation is where I receive the answers. That's also where I've been able to stop running from what I feel. Like, I think our feelings can be so overwhelming, and it can get to the point where it's like, if we stop, there's a fear that like they're going to overtake us. Like, I'm not going to be able to survive allowing all of these feelings to come up. And so through meditation and just sitting and being quiet and being still, I've found that that's really not true. Like that my emotions they're right there waiting for me. They're not going to go away if I don't address them. But if I just sit with them and be with them, they actually have space to come up and come through and be released. And so I've done a lot of my grieving through meditation and felt anger and just felt so many of the difficult emotions that come up when you struggle. And then I also do a lot of journaling and writing, which has been very cathartic. And one of my like simplest and most powerful tools that I have found is a daily gratitude list. So like no matter what, even if I'm in a really bad space, just waking up and saying, what is one thing I'm grateful for? And putting that down on paper so I can see it and say, like, I can claim it. It could be as simple as, all right, my bed's really comfortable. At least I've got that. And then some days I have, a list of 10 or 20 things, and I just feel extremely grateful, and that's coming through me. And that's been a huge way to shift my mindset. And I think that's another tool that I use is I pay attention to my thoughts. When I first started doing this, I got really curious about my thoughts. So what am I thinking? And it's interesting when you start to pay attention how you go, wow, I had no idea that I was being this hard on myself or that I was being negative about things or whatever it might be. I tried to not judge that, but just get curious. And really tracking my thoughts and being intentional about what I'm thinking has created a huge shift in my life.
So share with us a little bit about who you work with, how you work with them and partner with them, and what type of transformation you help them experience.
Yes, I love working with people who've gone through similar situations like I have. So chronic illness, infertility, which is a really hard one to work around, recovery, life purpose. But ultimately, I work with anyone who wants a better life. Like anyone who's willing to put in some time and some energy to really figure out like why are they here? What are they doing? What do they want to shift? And so I like to work with my clients on really just slowing down, paying attention, and getting very clear about what they want. Like, you can't start a road trip without a destination. You need to know where you're going. And so I love giving my clients that permission and space to really dream and vision and open their minds about what's possible.
So looking back, right, full grown Carrie who is alive, who is healthy, who is operating and functioning in her purpose. If you could go back to 20-year-old Carrie and share one, or maybe even 16-year-old Carrie, we'll start there, and just share a piece of advice for her that you've learned along the way at this point in your journey, what would you share with her?
I would share with her that she is never alone. That even though she feels lonely and lost, that she's connected to something so much bigger than her. And I think we call that so many different things. I say God, people say source or universe, but that there's like this unlimited well of help available to her at any time. And all she has to do is ask for it.
I love that. So as we wrap up here, Carrie, where can the audience find you?
Yes. So all of my information is available on my website, which is carriechown.com. And now that we're moving through the pandemic, I'm beginning to offer a service that is really unique, that combines coaching and energy work. I offer 3 and 6 month packages and would love to work with anyone who's interested with working with me.
Carrie's website is included in the show notes. As far as social, where do you hang out on social?
So mainly on Instagram, and I'm at Chown Carrie. They had to flip my name because there was another Carrie Chown on there. So that's the main place that I go. I'm also on LinkedIn, so you can find me in those 2 places.
Connect with Carrie on Instagram and certainly LinkedIn. Let her know that you heard her amazing testimony on the Journey to Becoming podcast. And so before we let you go, Carrie, any final thoughts, any final thing that you want to share with the audience that they can use as a takeaway or perhaps something to journal on or meditate on?
Yes. So, I think it is clear that throughout my story, there's this theme of surrender. And I think that so often we think of surrendering as giving up, but I just want to encourage people that if there's something you're struggling with, if there's something you feel like you're running from, whether it's your fears, your feelings, the unknown, it takes a lot of courage and bravery to actually stop and to turn around and to face that, and then to ask for the help that you need to get through whatever it is. So I would encourage people just to know that it's okay. It's okay to stop running. It's okay to break down. It's okay to feel what you're feeling. And it's really okay to ask for help. Like, help will come if you ask. And I think that that's probably the bravest thing we can do.
I am a living witness that help does come when you ask for it each and every single time. So thank you so much for that, Carrie. Thank you again for coming on the show, for sharing your wonderful and powerful testimony. Again, links to connect with Carrie are in the show notes. Please reach out. Of course, if you found value in this episode, please go ahead and like, share, download it, and leave a comment. Thank you again, Carrie.
Thank you, Sabine.
Thank you so much for tuning into this week's episode. I hope you were able to grab a few nuggets and some action items that you can begin implementing this week. I'll be back next week with some more actionable tips to help you along your journey of transition, change, and transformation. In the meantime, please be sure to subscribe and leave a comment on the platform of your choosing. And if you really enjoyed this content, go ahead and share it with your network. Share it with a friend, a family member, whoever it is you know that might benefit from the information that was shared today. Until next time, have a wonderful and purposeful week.